Hi, Elle. Nice to meet you. I'm Beth Wheeler, and I thought I would send you a little video so that you can kind of see what's going on in class. The subplan is very detailed and typed out, but I find that just talking about it makes it make a little more sense. So, the students are coming to class with a little bit of an understanding of what a response essay is. They're essentially writing a rhetorical analysis of a nonfiction text in the essay. And what I need for them to do in class tomorrow from 1 until 3:45, we are in Cherry Creek 142, is to prepare for the rough draft of the response essay that's due next Friday on the 13th. So you're essentially going to be taking them through some pre-drafting strategies, and that's going to require them to work in groups the whole class period, and also to use their course journal. So those are some things. They'll need their course journal out. And then I'm going to show you two handouts that I need for you to distribute to them, although I'm thinking right now I forgot to open the one, but I'll find it and email it to you. I'll describe it to you in a minute. And if you don't mind making copies of those, I neglected to make those copies yesterday when I was on campus, but I've attached these two handouts to the email, and you can print them and or print them and copy them. Or if you don't have time to copy them, you can open the documents in class and tell them that I've uploaded them inside D2L and that they can access them after class. And they can do all the work in their journal. So it's not really that big of a deal if they don't have the handouts, because we have the journal as a backup tool. All right, so they're coming to class having read one of these four sources. They have to pick one of these nonfiction essays for the response essay. I will send another video that I will ask you to show at the beginning of class so they know what's going on for the week, and hear me talk about why I'm not there, yada, yada, yada. And then this assignment, this journal assignment, if they ask you about it, I will check it next week, but I'll mention it in the video to the students. And then they have watched a video on researching secondary sources. They should have printouts of two secondary sources they're thinking about using for the response essay. We will use those in class. And if you could collect the error log, excuse me, if you could collect the error log that they should have done, and I'll put that in the beginning of class just to collect that and get that out of the way so they don't have to think about it anymore. Remind them to put their names on it. It's handwritten. They will perhaps have forgotten to put their names on it, and I won't know whose error log is who if they don't do that. All right, so that's beginning of class. I have the subplan. Let me bring it up. Beginning of class, I'll ask you to collect the error log. Actually, I'll ask you to show my video so they can hear what's going on, collect the error log, and then we'll get started with the pre-drafting for the rest of the class period. And I do give them a break, usually between 2:15 and 2:30, and I give them a 15-minute break, so you can break this wherever you want. Excuse me. So I would, if I were you, put the names of these essays on the whiteboard or an abbreviated version of the title, and have the students come up to the front of the room and autograph the whiteboard so you know where to put groups within the classroom. So go ahead and get them moved into their groups. I want them to be working with students who are using the same essay for the response essay as they are, so that they can talk about ideas throughout the whole class period as you take them through the pre-drafting. So have them autograph the board, move them into groups, and then get started with step number 1, so we're pre-drafting for this analysis, this rhetorical analysis essay, this response essay, and all we've done previously is looked at a couple of examples and sort of outlined them so they can see where things are within the structure of the response essay. And so they have an understanding of what a response essay is, sort of. Now they have to apply that for themselves. So step 1 is to have them come up with criteria that they can use. And I would like for them to work as a group first to talk about the essays they are familiar with, the source they've chosen, to come up with a list of 10 criteria. Could be things like disagreeing with a point, looking at the way the author concludes, looking at how the author uses pathos, whatever the groups come up with, right? I'm not feeding them the criteria. They're coming up with the criteria. After the group's work, if you could please have a class conversation and categorize the criteria into these 3 types of response: interpretive, evaluative, rhetorical. I actually put 3 columns up on the board. And as the groups go around and feed me their best criteria, they don't have to report all 10. They can report their best 3, their best 5, whatever you choose to do. Please have them report that back, and then you categorize it for them. And just to kind of make the point that here's a bigger list of criteria, you're hearing all the people in class contribute ideas to this, and then I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. My allergies are acting crazy today. I apologize. So after you categorize everything, talk to them about that they could choose any of these criteria for their body paragraphs in the response essay, and that they will do for homework some work on their thesis statement. I will help them with that part. So the first plan is to just think about, what do they want to evaluate? What do they want to respond to? What do they want to analyze in their response essay? Then you're going to give them the first of the 2 handouts. This is a handout with 10 boxes on it. I kind of set it up to look like an outline. And you guys, you can read through the instructions here, but they're going to ignore paragraphs 1 and 2 and paragraph 10. They're going to number the paragraphs 1 through 10 going down. Ignore paragraphs 1 and 2 and 10, because we know those are going to be introductory paragraphs and conclusion paragraph. And paragraphs 3 through 9 are the body paragraphs. And at this point, I would give them several moments in class to select the criteria they think they want to apply to their primary source that they will write the response essay on. And so they're still sitting in groups, and they can choose whichever criteria they want, or they can, mimic some of the criteria they've heard their classmate or group mates say and during the group work, and so give them some time to select. So the goal here is that they're sort of starting to outline their essay a little bit, and so they know what their body paragraphs will be focused on. Step number 3 will be for them to go to their textbook. Open their textbook to the primary source. I'm going to scroll back up and remind you that I've given you the starting page for those essays, so you can remind them where that is as well. It's also in D2L. That information's in D2L. So they should go to their primary source and, excuse me, on that outline form, jot down references to page numbers, paragraph numbers, or even they can write out a quote or a paraphrase of, excuse me, the source that, the example from the source that they want to use in the corresponding body paragraphs. Then step 4, after they've found the passages that they want to use as examples in their response essay, I would like for you to please teach them about the difference between choosing to quote a passage, paraphrase a passage, or summarize a passage. You can put notes up on the whiteboard. You can type stuff into a Word document to show them what you're talking about. If you emailed me that document after class, I could add that to D2L after class. Whatever you choose to do, but I'd like for you to go through the stuff that we know about why do we choose paraphrase versus quote. Why do we choose summary versus paraphrase? So they've practiced paraphrasing, they've practiced summarizing, they know how to do it. We just haven't talked about why do you do it, other than the teacher assigning it, right? And so this is kind of where I like to remind them that quoting should be a very selective. Quoting a passage should require that they're very selective about that, that they're mostly paraphrasing, as you know, and then sometimes summarizing, but we have to give them that information. So I'm sure there's information about that in the textbook. If you want to refer them to that and read that part, that would be fine. But talking through those choices would be really helpful. And then I'd like for you in step 5 for them to go back to the examples that they've just written on their outline and label for themselves. Will I paraphrase that one? Will I quote that one? So give them a chance to practice what you just talked to them about and going through the thinking about what form does my source show up in my essay. Step 6, they should have those secondary sources that I mentioned, and if you could please have them get those out. If you could roam around the class to see who has what, that would be fantastic. You could even just take a piece of paper and just write down who doesn't have it. This is how I check the assignments in class, so they're very used to this. And if students do have it on their phone or their computer, you could jot that down. I will give them partial credit, but I did ask for them to print those out. And then I'd like for you to, they're still in their groups, so now I want the groups to talk about the secondary sources they've found, to share that information with one another, and then once they've shared what they have found, to talk about how can they make this information fit into their essay. They can't just put a secondary source in just random, right, as you know. So they have to think about ways that it will fit. Where will it go? What passage am I using from this secondary source? So take them through all of that thinking, please. And this is all done in the groups. And then after the groups talk, and maybe let them talk for 10 to 12 minutes, ask the groups to volunteer someone from the group. And what I've been doing with my other sections is giving them a choice. So if there's someone in the group who has no idea how to use their sources, they can share the sources they've brought with them that day with the class. And then as a class, we can brainstorm for how one of those sources could fit. So you might have to draw out more information from the student about what they're writing about, etc. The other option is to have the group volunteer someone who has a secondary source that's really strong and they know exactly how they are going to use it. And so they kind of explain that. And then I would follow that up with, reinforcing to the class why that example was really good, and helping them to see that using sources isn't just a requirement in an assignment, but that there's some critical thinking involved in making that source fit and relate and all of that good stuff, making the source relevant. So this is a conversation. And then after they've talked about how they're going to use their secondary sources, I'd like you to show this video where I'm talking about this handout. This is the quote cheeseburger. The 3 parts represent the way in which we synthesize sources. And so in my video, I'll be talking about the quote cheeseburger. If you have time to give them a handout copy, a paper copy of this, that would be fantastic. If not, again, remind them that I will upload it in D2L for them to review. And I'll probably even say in the homework that I'd like them to hear that video again. And so then after they watch the video, I want them to practice the quote cheeseburger as I did in the video. They should write it in the journal. They should copy down a passage that they think they want to use from the secondary source into their journal, and then add the quote lead-in or the introduction, and then the in-text citation, and then some kind of follow-up, so that they have the 3 parts that will synthesize that quote into their essay. And then if you want to remind them, and I definitely will later on, but if you want to remind them that this quote that they've just practiced could also be a paraphrase or a summary, that would be great. Because as you know, sometimes we can synthesize summaries and paraphrases the same way that we do quotes, but of course not always. And then step 9, if you could have a little conversation with the students about conclusion ideas. You can put them in groups. You can talk about it as a whole class. You might refer them to the It movie review that we read last week. Look again at that very short conclusion and get them talking about ways that they can wrap up this response essay. Remind them that I've put a copy, and I will in the video as well, but if you get a chance to remember this, and I know it's impossible to sub for someone, so I'm just mentioning as much as I can. If you remind them that I have a chapter in the textbook, a chapter from a different textbook uploaded in D2L that they can look at for 2 more conclusion ideas. And these were response essays written by students. Then they can look there as well. But get them talking about conclusion ideas. So they're walking away with this handout with the boxes, or they've done this in their journal if you don't have time to copy that handout. So the handout that I don't have up on my screen right now is just a Word document with 10 boxes, and the boxes represent paragraphs, and I'm sort of using it as an outline. So you could either have them draw those 10 boxes in the journal before the beginning of all this work, because you see how much they've collected in this outline thing as we've gone through class, or you can have the handout, and I will attach it and find it for you. Find it and attach it for you, and so then if you have time to copy that would be great. So I think I've covered everything, and that will be the end of class, and you'll just remind them that they have a rough draft due, and tell them that I will have all the D2L homework posted as usual, and then if they have questions, they should contact me and stuff. But I think they should be fine. And if you have any questions at all about class and anything that I'm not being clear on in this video, please don't hesitate to text or call me. I've just typed my cell phone at the top of the subplan, and I won't be available during class. My meeting will be going on at that time, this appointment that I have that I can't get out of. But if you text me before that and need, or call me before that, I can clarify whatever you need me to. And I thank you so much, Elle, for covering the class for me today. These things just kind of come up sometimes. Have a great class, have a great weekend, and thanks a lot.